Hey guys, today I'll show you a horror thriller TV series named Tarot. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The first story begins with a bridegroom suddenly feeling unwell while taking wedding photos. Still, he managed to endure it and complete the photo shoot before hurriedly heading to the restroom. As soon as he entered, he couldn't hold back and vomited. This scene was witnessed by Park, who mocked him, saying if men were really this nervous about getting married. To her surprise, the bridegroom calmly replied, "It's not nervousness." He genuinely felt like throwing up. Park didn't dwell on it much. He just thought the bridegroom was having a hard time accepting the end of his bachelor days. As this thought lingered, he overheard the bridegroom asking if he was planning to get married soon. He went on to share a piece of advice, speaking from his own experience. Before setting a wedding date, Park should consider seeking some counseling. He mentioned that there are probably many companies offering this service now and urged him to consult one, unlike him. Marriage made him face reality, and he hoped Park wouldn't end up on the same path as him. Then he left the restroom, leaving Park completely puzzled. At that moment, Park noticed a red business card on the sink. He picked it up and saw the words "couple manager" written on it, along with a phone number. Remembering the bridegroom's advice, he hesitated for a moment, but ultimately decided to call the number. That evening, following the instructions on the phone, Park arrived at a strange and unfamiliar place. There, he was greeted by an equally peculiar painting and an unusual woman who seemed to be in charge. This woman, unlike anyone Park had met before, spoke with extraordinary eloquence. Her words carried a deep, almost mystical wisdom, as though she had seen through all of life's mysteries. One could easily tell her consulting fees would be exorbitant. She began by stating that everything in life has cause and effect, and that the future is already predestined. The woman looked through Park's information. At 34 years old, Park was a mid-level office worker. His girlfriend, Yoon, was her junior from university and newly employed at a national financial institution. The woman explained that in their profession, there's a rigid hierarchy, and someone like Yoon, young, beautiful, successful, and with a bright future, falls into the most desirable category in the marriage market. In contrast, Park, whether in terms of family background or career prospects, was not on her level. Park was bewildered, wondering how this turned into a discussion about ranking systems since he just came here for premarital advice. The woman calmly replied, "Because marriage ultimately adheres to certain hierarchies. Everything will be upended when those hierarchies are not aligned." Frustrated, Park accused the woman of breaking up couples rather than offering marriage counseling. Angered, he stood up to leave. Compared to his outburst, the woman remained composed. She said she was only trying to help him resolve the issues he was facing. She hadn't even started yet. If he leaves now, she can guarantee his marriage will be beyond saving. Left with no choice, Park sat back down and listened. The conversation soon turned serious. The woman asked if Yoon changed the subject to talk about the wedding house recently, whenever the topic of dowries or bride gifts came up. Park thought about it and admitted that she did. The woman said that was perfectly normal and the reason was simple. She deduced that when he mentioned specific wedding dates, Yoon brushed it off playfully, and that before Yoon got this job, she was the one pushing hard for marriage. Her words hit Park like a ton of bricks. Everything she said rang true, leaving him speechless in front of this woman who seemed to know his situation so well. The woman promised Park that in the near future, she would ensure he and Yoon would walk into the sacred halls of marriage. No one could stand in her way. However, from now on, Park had to follow all her instructions. The first step was to secretly install something in Yoon's phone. This device would monitor Yoon's activity, and it revealed conversations between Yoon and her friends. From those chats, Park learned that Yoon's friends believed he wasn't good enough. His background wasn't impressive, his job was ordinary, and someone of Yoon's caliber could easily find a higher quality man. Coincidentally, her friend even had such a man lined up, ready to introduce to Yoon. Although Yoon hadn't agreed, her silence implied a level of acceptance. This discovery left Park simmering with anger. That evening, when he saw Yoon at home, he wanted to confront her and vent his frustration. But as soon as he raised the issue, Yoon dodged the conversation with excuses like needing a shower or forgetting something important. Left with no outlet for his anger, the night passed quietly and the silent treatment began. The next day, a sulking Yoon was approached by a man who seemed both gentle and warm. It appeared he had been paying attention to her sexy body for some time. Through their conversation, Yoon learned his name was Min, and his parents lived in the US with a comfortable amount of wealth. Min was their only child, and they had bought him an apartment in Seoul. However, Min, being a proud man, didn't want to rely on his parents' money and had taken a job at a financial firm. His salary was decent, at least $40 million per year. As Min spoke, Yoon listened, and the more they talked, the more she felt a connection with him. Before she knew it, they had arrived downstairs near her building. Just as they turned a corner, there stood Park. The timing couldn't have been more awkward. All three were visibly embarrassed. After a brief pause, Yoon collected herself and told Min that a friend came to pick her up, carefully avoiding the word boyfriend. She said goodbye to Min and pulled Park away. On their way home, Yoon kept explaining herself, insisting that Min was just a co-worker who randomly invited her for a drink and that she had no interest in him. Park, unconvinced, asked if she had exchanged phone numbers with him. Hesitating briefly, Yoon admitted he asked for her number, so she gave it to him. Park was furious, asking if she would give her number to any nasty guy who asked. Yoon defended herself, saying they were colleagues. It would have been rude to refuse. Besides, Park also had the numbers of his female co-workers. Realizing the conversation was heading nowhere, Yoon stopped arguing, paused briefly, then scolded Park for raising his voice. She asked what was wrong with him lately. Frustrated, she got out of the car, leaving things unresolved. The following day, it was Park who caved first. He couldn't hold back and sent her a message, biting his nails nervously as he typed. Yoon's reply came quickly, saying, "It's fine." Relieved, Park immediately asked her to go out for dinner, but Yoon turned him down, saying she had plans to meet her female co-workers. But Park wasn't naive. Even a fool wouldn't believe that. The scene shifts back to Yoon. After work, she indeed left with Min, and during the entire time, she didn't resist his hormone advances, confirming all of Park's suspicions. As the two laughed and chatted while leaving the company together, Park emerged from behind them, his face full of resentment. He was seething, desperate to bite his nails again, but he refrained. Later, he went to Yoon's apartment, and seeing that her lights were off, his last shred of hope crumbled. He recalled the woman's promise, that if he just trusted her, she would ensure Yoon married him. That thought made Park even angrier. If Yoon truly ended up marrying him, this incident would undoubtedly become a thorn in his heart. But for now, he decided to take things one step at a time. With that, he left Yoon's building. The next morning, Yoon woke up feeling a deep sense of regret. She realized she had likely done something reckless and hurtful to Park after drinking too much the previous night. Feeling guilty, she immediately sent Park a text. At that moment, Park was still angry and refused to reply. When Yoon's call came through, he ignored it as well. Park didn't yet know how to confront Yoon or tear apart their relationship, so for now, he chose to endure it. Meanwhile, after calming Park down, Yoon turned to confide in her best friend about the previous night. Her friend, delighted for Yoon, told her that marriage was a practical matter. Given Yoon's qualities, she could definitely find a much better man. Her friend suggested Yoon should break up with her boyfriend since things had already gone this far. Yoon smiled secretly at her friend's words, but outwardly pretended to defend herself, saying she was not that kind of person. Her tone, however, betrayed a certain insincerity. After that chat, Yoon agreed to go hiking with Min. On the way, she told him she wasn't that kind of woman and had simply drunk too much the night before. Min chuckled and replied, if she was not that kind of person, then she must have really been drinking. Embarrassed, Yoon stumbled and accidentally dropped her phone. When she picked it up, Min caught a glimpse of a photo of her with Park. Yoon hesitated for a moment but quickly hid the picture and decided to come clean. She confessed everything to Min. Hearing this, Min was overjoyed, as if he'd been waiting for this moment for a long time. He reassured Yoon that he was serious about her and would cherish her from now on. With that, the truth was out, and the two officially got together. To commemorate their first day as a couple, Min suggested taking a photo at the edge of a cliff. He insisted they include a tree in the shot and smile happily while posing. The photo turned out beautifully. However, as Min turned around, he accidentally pushed Yoon's heavy body off the cliff. The situation was dire, and Min tried desperately to grab her hand, but Yoon was wearing gloves. Despite his efforts, all he managed to hold on to was the glove, and Yoon fell. To Min's relief, the cliff wasn't very high, and Yoon survived. The bad news was that it took a long time for her to be found, and due to the delayed rescue, she might have to spend the rest of her life in a wheelchair. This setback was a major blow to Yoon, who now seemed to reconsider her priorities. She turned her focus back to Park. Park forgave her. After all, how else could he execute his plan for revenge later? Around this time, Park was promoted to department manager, and his rising status attracted the attention of other women. Yoon, on the other hand, suffered misfortune. Her extended hospital stay, combined with her lifelong disability, led to her being fired. She lost her job and sank even lower in status. The growing gap between her and Park made her anxious and afraid that he would leave her. But the more desperate she became, the more satisfied Park felt, and the less interested he was in her. Just when Yoon hit rock bottom, feeling hopeless and dejected, she received a red business card, the same one Park had once received, and that same woman had now approached Yoon. Perhaps because they were both women, she sympathized with Yoon's plight. Or maybe she simply enjoyed toying with human emotions for her own amusement. She told Yoon that she could help her win Park back. The words she had once said to Park, she now repeated to Yoon. Marriage and the realities of life are about hierarchies. To put it plainly, fish find fish, shrimp find shrimp, and turtles pair with tortoises. The woman explained that if one can't raise their own status, the only alternative is to bring the other person down. Back then, when she helped Park deal with Yoon, she had used this very tactic. Now, in helping Yoon deal with Park, she would use the same approach. The woman accepted Yoon's request to reduce Park to her level. Meanwhile, Park, who was enjoying himself at the peak of his life, suddenly found himself blinded, quite literally. Whether he was fired afterward remains unclear, but in the end, he wound up sobbing in Yoon's warm arms, just as she had predicted. Even though they had both seen through each other's true natures, they chose to stay together to cling to what remained. On their wedding day, Park finally understood how his senior had felt back then. His senior hadn't been nervous. He had been genuinely disgusted. Just like that senior, Park stubbornly straightened his suit and composed himself before heading into the hall to take wedding photos with Yoon, who was now in a wheelchair. Yet this time, the confidence he once had was gone. On the steps, he stumbled and fell, as if weighed down by his own fate. They did get married, but it seemed the love they once shared was long gone. In its place were nothing but compromise and pretense. The story ends here, with Park's nausea mirroring his senior's disgust, bringing everything full circle. It seemed that the senior also signed some sort of agreement with that mysterious woman. Yet it's unclear that how many people she had made such agreements with what her real purpose was. But it's certain that what she did was truly to bring lovers together. After all, both Yoon and Park ended up disabled because of her interference. The second story begins with a man named Ray, who was now in his 40s and had finally climbed the corporate ladder and secured a leadership role. Compared to many, he was considered successful in his career, with a solid financial foundation. Yet, his success also attracted the attention of younger women, one of whom was a sexy girl named Beauty. She clung to him relentlessly, always playing flirtatious games. Because of Beauty, Ray often spent nights away from home. The problem was, he loved his wife and had no intention of getting a divorce, so he concocted countless lies to cover his tracks. The thing about lies is that one always leads to another, and soon he found himself tangled in an endless web. One particular night, Ray decided to go home, but Beauty wasn't having it. She wouldn't let him go without a fight. She threatened if he left, she would call his wife. Her words made Ray irritable. He sat on the sofa with a sigh, absent-mindedly picking up a pen from the table and clicking it repeatedly. Annoyed by his reaction, Beauty scolded him. Ray glanced at her but eventually stopped fidgeting with the pen. Using a softer tone, he pleaded with her not to call his wife because she had a terrible temper. If she finds out, she'll cause a scene at his company. Not only will he be in trouble, but she'll get dragged into it too. He thought his reasoning would convince her, but Beauty wouldn't budge. Seeing that he couldn't win her over, Ray decided to cut the conversation short. He stood up, leaving behind an apology that she was the only one in his heart. Then he turned and left. Out in the hallway, Ray headed for the elevator, only to find that it was out of service. Resigned, he started down the stairs. On his way, he overheard the building manager scolding a janitor for not taking out the trash, and that he lost track of the pens again. He kept buying box after box, and they kept disappearing. Hearing this, Ray grew uneasy. By the time he reached the lobby, he guiltily pulled the pen from his pocket, planning to slip it back unnoticed. But as he did, something sharp scratched his hand. Startled, he looked down and saw it wasn't a pen after all, it was a tarot card. When had it become so sharp? Something about it felt eerie. The card was the Fool, symbolizing recklessness and adventure, a perfect reflection of Ray's current situation. After leaving the hotel, Ray hailed a taxi to go home. During the ride, his wife called several times, each time asking where he was. Ray fumbled through his lies, but the Tesla taxi driver quickly caught on, asking if he was cheating. Ray denied it, but the driver just chuckled, saying all men understand these things. Back in the day, he would have told him how to teach his wife a lesson, but he had mellowed out over the years. Their conversation was cut short when a delivery driver suddenly swerved in front of them, nearly causing an accident. Annoyed, the taxi driver slammed his stinky foot on the gas, overtaking the delivery driver and shouting a stream of curses. Once his anger subsided, the Tesla driver started reminiscing about his glory days. He said proudly that he used to be in the business. He once worked for the state, handling interrogations. He was pretty big time back then, saw all kinds of people, interrogated all kinds of criminals. No one could ever lie to him since he could spot a liar from a mile away. He turned to Ray with a knowing grin, saying when Ray was on the phone with his wife just now, he knew right away Ray was cheating. While Ray was listening to the driver boast about his past, he couldn't help but sneak a peek into the man's bag. What he found shocked him. The ID inside wasn't the driver's, and there were bloodstains on the back. Ray quickly tried to explain, but the driver saw through his concerns. He admitted that this car wasn't his. It's his cousin's. He was just borrowing it to make a little extra cash. If he were a criminal, he would just sell the car instead of driving around picking up passengers. The driver's reasoning seemed plausible, but Ray wasn't convinced. Just then, the driver received a phone call and didn't bother to hide it, putting it on speaker. Ray overheard someone on the other end saying something about catching the big one and that the customer needed to be delivered quickly. At this, the driver turned to Ray and casually mentioned that he might take a detour to handle something, reassuring him not to worry and that he'd deduct the extra fare from the total. But Ray wasn't concerned about the fare. He was growing more anxious, fidgeting with the pen in his pocket. The driver drove to a secluded spot, stopped the car, and said he needed to use the bathroom. Without waiting for a reply, he got out and walked off. Suspicious, Ray followed him. What he overheard next made his heart sink. The driver said they were a big one this time, and they needed to make sure they got a good price. Ray's heart froze. He immediately understood. The driver had brought him to this remote place to sell him. Panicked, he planned to leave while the driver was still in the bathroom dumping his wastewater, but his legs were shaking from fear. As he tried to sneak away, he accidentally made a noise, and the driver noticed. He asked why he was so scared, clearly puzzled. Seeing the fear on Ray's face, the driver pressed, asking if he was here to pee too. Ray, still terrified, nodded reflexively. The driver chuckled and said they should get back in the car. It's cold out here. Despite the driver's apparent concern and friendly smile, Ray felt nothing but dread. Once in the car, Ray tried to check his phone, the one the driver had been charging for him. To his dismay, the battery was still at 0%. Noticing that the driver seemed in no hurry to leave, Ray asked if he was waiting for someone. The driver didn't answer directly, instead asking why Ray was so curious. When Ray stayed quiet, the driver finally said he was waiting for a buyer and this was just a second-hand deal. That sentence, coupled with the driver's indifferent smile, was the last straw for Ray. Inside, he was seething with rage. The driver had just reduced him to some kind of second-hand commodity. Furious, Ray pulled out his pen and used it to kill the driver. After taking care of the driver, Ray tried to drive off, but the car got stuck in the mud. Desperate and in despair, Ray's phone rang. It was a message from the buyer saying he would be here in 5 minutes. It's their first time meeting. Since it was the first meeting, Ray decided to stay calm and acted as if he were the seller, waiting for the buyer to arrive. Sure enough, a car soon pulled up and 2 people stepped out. Ray greeted them casually and asked if they could help him get the car out of the mud before opening the back door for them to inspect the goods. The 2 buyers stood frozen, not responding. After a brief pause, they asked Ray to open the trunk. Ray didn't understand why, but he complied. As the buyers looked inside, they saw the real goods. At the same time, Ray's wife called again, demanding to know why he wasn't home yet. Ray patiently tried to explain and continue his lie, completely unaware of the 2 buyers in the back. The 2 buyers decided to keep Ray calm for now. Once Ray finished his call and stepped out of the car, he finally saw the deer. In that instant, everything became clear. This had all been a giant misunderstanding. The big cargo the driver had mentioned was the deer, not him. But Ray had already killed the driver, all because he panicked. He then blamed the driver for showing off and getting himself into trouble. The 2 buyers hadn't called the police immediately because they didn't want to alert Ray and let him escape. They planned to subdue him first before reporting the incident. But these 2 idiots overestimated their ability to handle Ray. In the chaos, he managed to kill them both. Now with 3 bodies on his hands, Ray loaded them into the taxi, doused it in gasoline, and set it on fire. After taking care of everything, Ray found his way back to the main road and tried to hail a cab to get home. Strangely, no empty taxis dared stop for him. It wasn't until much later that a police car approached him. At that moment, Ray thought the taxi incident had been discovered, but to his surprise, the police asked him if he knew Beauty. It was then that Ray suddenly remembered Beauty was dead too, by his hand. A few hours earlier, when Ray said he was leaving, Beauty had threatened to call his wife. Ray stood silently behind her as she dialed, listening as Beauty told his wife about their relationship. Unable to hold back any longer, Ray killed her. But when he picked up Beauty's phone, he realized she hadn't even connected the call. It was all an act. Back in the present, Ray tried explaining to the police that he had acted in self-defense, claiming it was all Beauty's fault for constantly threatening him with his wife. Seeing the police unmoved, Ray grew agitated again, nervously clicking the pen in his pocket. One of the officers asked what he was doing, but Ray didn't answer. Instead, his expression hardened, and in an instant, the police car swerved violently on the road and flipped over. The scene shifted. Bloodied and exhausted, Ray stumbled through an underground passage while on the phone with his wife. He explained that it was all his boss's fault. If he hadn't dragged him out for dinner, none of this would have happened. His wife wasn't buying it. She said she'd called the company and was told there hadn't been any dinner. He asked if he was lying again. Ray was caught off guard, but quickly rebounded that his boss only invited him, that's all. His wife fell silent, maybe already used to his lies. They then chatted about their child, how he got into a fight that day and ended up winning. Before hanging up, his wife told him to come home early. At that moment, Ray noticed an advertisement on the wall. It read, "Marriage isn't about two halves coming together. It's about becoming one." This struck a chord with Ray. He thought of his wife. Taking the tarot card and the pen from his pocket, he tossed them into a nearby locker and walked toward home. In this story, it seems that Ray's wife knew everything about his life outside the home, but chose not to expose him. She probably knew Ray well enough to understand that no matter what he did out there, his heart belonged to his family. So she stopped trying to control him. And as it turns out, she was right. Ray went to extreme lengths, telling lies and even committing 6 murders, all to make his way back home. The reversed adventure and recklessness tarot card symbolizes impulsive and careless decisions. Ray's actions were exactly that, rash and thoughtless. The third story begins with a shady man who was triggered by his shady hormone desire at midnight. Unable to sleep, the shady man opened his phone and arranged a late-night meetup with a girl. But when he arrived at the meeting spot, there was no sign of her body, let alone her smell. Confused, he pulled out his phone and sent her a message, completely unaware that the girl was hiding on a nearby pedestrian bridge, watching everything unfold. The girl's name was Soul, a popular internet influencer. She ran a live stream series called The Willing Get Hooked, a show that had exploded in popularity. As the name suggests, the premise was simple. Every night, she'd pick a random fool to mess with. And tonight's fool was none other than the shady man. At this moment, the shady man was frantically texting Soul, asking where she was. He explained that he'd already arrived and was eagerly waiting for her body, and his little sausage was getting impatient. Seeing this, Soul burst out laughing her hair off. For the sake of content and entertainment, she messaged him back with a bizarre suggestion. She told him to get it on with the rabbit statue. The shady man was stunned. He looked left and right to make sure no one was around, then took off his stinky pants and obediently followed instructions. Little did he know the entire scene was being live-streamed by Soul. Just as things got intense, Soul suddenly screamed at the top of her chicken lungs. This scared the life out of the shady man and his swollen sausage. Panicking, he scrambled to pull up his pants and fled the scene, leaving the rabbit behind. Soul, of course, had a field day. That night, she earned a wave of donations from viewers with unique tastes. The next day, she edited the footage into a short video and posted it on social media, earning even more attention and some highly lucrative ads from certain brands. But when the shady man stumbled across the video, he wasn't having it. Soul had built her fame and fortune on his humiliation, and now he couldn't even face his own dog, let alone anyone else. Enraged, he reported Soul to the platform, demanding that all compromising videos be removed immediately. He even managed to squeeze a payout from Soul's business partner. Seeing how things were spiraling, the partner tried to reason with Soul. He warned her that luring people out and secretly recording them was illegal and suggested she change the content of her show. But Soul wouldn't listen. Frustrated, the partner decided to part ways, saying if that's how she wanted to play, she was on her own. Furious, Soul lashed out at him, calling him a jerk. Their argument escalated in the car, and in a moment of anger, Soul slapped her business partner on the head. The man was livid. Without another word, he pulled over, got out, and left Soul stranded in the middle of a traffic jam. Soul panicked. She didn't even have a driver's license. How she managed to drive the car back remains a mystery, but somehow she made it in time for her live stream that night. With her partner gone, Soul felt free to take things up a notch. She started the stream with a dance for her big donors, then showed off the designer bags she'd bought with their money. At one point, she pulled out a tarot card that she'd found while car shopping, a mysterious card that caught her eye. Smiling mischievously, she asked her viewers if anyone knew what it meant. Sure enough, an expert in the audience quickly explained it was the Chariot, a card symbolizing determination, forward momentum, and success. Soul lit up with excitement. Just as she was about to say something, her phone rang. The caller ID read Banana, tonight's hooked fool. Seeing the name, Soul grinned, held a finger to her lips, and picked up the call. The conversation was short. They arranged a time and place to meet. After hanging up, Soul turned back to the camera, smirking, and teased that ugly guys were always the most delusional. With a face like that, he still thought he had a shot with her, so she was going to teach this one a lesson he wouldn't forget. With that, she ended the stream and began setting up her next prank. After setting everything up, Soul went live. She arrived at a hotel standing in front of room 308. Knocking on the door and hearing no response, she simply pushed it open and walked in. As she stepped further into the room, she noticed the silhouette of a woman. Soul greeted her, but the woman didn't respond. Puzzled, Soul walked closer, and that's when she accidentally triggered a hidden mechanism, causing the woman's head to suddenly pop forward. Soul let out a startled chicken scream but quickly burst into laughter. After all, she had set up this prank herself. It was all part of her plan to give tonight's ugly guy a lesson he wouldn't forget. A while later, Soul was on the phone with the man, giving him the address and instructing him to come straight over. With her phone in hand, she quietly waited in a corner. Soon enough, she spotted him, a scruffy-looking guy in glasses, dressed casually. At first glance, Soul thought he really was ugly. She followed the man upstairs. Before entering the room, she watched him nervously spray breath freshener into his mouth, then pull out his wallet to check. All he had was a single condom, which made him grumble in disappointment. He muttered, "It's better than nothing," before stepping inside. The man entered the room, immediately spotting the mannequin Soul had set up. Assuming it was his date, he awkwardly greeted it, trying to play it cool while inching nervously closer. Although his mind was clearly filled with wild thoughts, he made every effort to act like a gentleman, a performance that Soul, hiding in the hallway, found hilarious. She nearly burst out laughing but bit her lip to avoid giving herself away. The man talked and talked, but with no response from the mannequin, and with pressure mounting from his smelly sausage, he finally gathered the courage to move closer. That's when he triggered the mechanism. The mannequin's head popped up, and the man let out a panicked yell, screaming for his mother. This sent Soul and her live stream audience into hysterics. After a moment, the man recovered, realizing that the person he'd been sweet-talking was actually just a mannequin. And worse yet, it had scared him so much that he'd screamed for his mom, a moment he hadn't experienced in years. Furious, the man realized he'd been pranked, and while he couldn't find the culprit, he vented his anger by ripping the mannequin's head off. On his way out, he called Soul, but she didn't dare pick up. Only after he left did she sneak back into the room, laughing as she held up the mannequin's mangled head to mock the man in front of her fans. She even shared his personal details, completely oblivious to the fact that her actions would soon bring trouble. On her way home, Soul got stuck in a massive traffic jam. Bored, she started scrolling through her phone, only to stumble across a shocking video. It turned out that the man was no ordinary target. He was, in fact, one of Soul's longtime superfans. Everything that had happened tonight was part of his elaborate plan, something he had been scheming for a while. In the video, he smugly revealed that he was already waiting at Soul's house, preparing for his grand finale. Seeing this, Soul was furious. She urged the driver to hurry up, but he shrugged helplessly since the road was packed. Left with no choice, Soul jumped out of the car, running the rest of the way home, forgetting to pay the fare in her haste. Along the way, Soul called the police. When she finally got home, the officers searched the place with her, but after a thorough inspection, they found no trace of the man. The police began to suspect Soul was making the whole thing up and left soon after, believing it was just a false alarm. Thinking the ordeal was over, Soul resumed her live stream. As expected, she started trash-talking the man, calling him a pathetic loser, a stupid clown, and other insults. Once her anger had subsided, she proudly showed off a new designer bag she had bought, flaunting it for her audience. Just then, she noticed the man had gone live. Curious, she clicked on his stream. The screen was pitch black, and all she could hear was his voice, an unsettling, continuous laugh. It sounded like he was hiding somewhere, maybe inside a closet or some other dark space. He kept laughing as though he had just thought of the funniest joke in the world. Soul finally realizes something's wrong, wondering why there was an echo coming from the expensive sound system she'd just bought. After fiddling with it for a while without success, it seemed like she had an idea. Looking at the man's live stream, she suddenly got a chilling feeling. The man had somehow made his way to her room, and before she could react, he rushed in and took control of the situation. Meanwhile, the business partner received a message from Soul. She apologized for her previous behavior, saying she couldn't do without him and that she was wrong. The partner read the message with a pleased smile, immediately paid the bill, and left to head to Soul's place. When he arrived, he found Soul sitting motionless in a chair. She didn't respond to his greeting, so he went ahead and entered. That's when something terrifying happened. Soul's head popped off, just like the mannequin earlier. This shocking moment terrified the partner so much that he froze, screaming for his mother. And of course, the man was live streaming the whole thing, laughing at Soul for being such a coward. He also announced that the real Soul had already left the country, and from now on, he would be taking over her live streams. The fourth story begins with Jay, along with a friend, going to a bar for a night out. He ended up successfully picking up a girl. As he sat on the bed, watching her shower, both Jay and his friend were pretty pleased with themselves. However, when the girl finished her shower, instead of making a move, Jay asked for her phone number. The girl was stunned. She thought she was here with him in a hotel room, and he was only asking for her phone number. If he weren't asking for it, she'd be wondering if she was not attractive enough. Unfortunately for Jay, the girl already had a boyfriend and wasn't looking for anything serious. She wasn't going to give him her number. Jay, shocked, couldn't believe it. His mood soured and he felt a little deflated. The girl continued to mock him, and Jay's breathing grew shallow. After leaving the hotel, Jay walked into an underground passage. No one knew whether or not he had been with the girl earlier, but now he was far less tense and more relaxed than before. He approached a locker and stared intently at an ad about love on the wall, lost in thought. After a while, Jay noticed his shirt was stained. There seemed to be blood on the collar. Annoyed, he peeled off the shirt, threw it into a nearby locker, locked it up, and left. The locker had a warning on it, for individual use only. It was a simple statement, so ordinary that Jay didn't even pay it any attention. No one expected that this seemingly insignificant warning would hold a deeper meaning. Jay was currently interning at a barber shop. He was a bit awkward and clumsy, so his colleagues didn't think highly of him. However, Jay was good-looking, and customers liked him, especially the lady sitting in front of him right now, who seemed to take a particular interest in him. Out of politeness, Jay gave the lady his phone number, which made his colleagues even more irritated. That night, on his way home, Jay passed through the same underground passage. As he thought about his shirt, he decided to go back to the locker and get it. But when he opened the locker, he was shocked to find a strand of hair inside. Unsure of what was going on, Jay calmly took his shirt and threw the hair on the floor in disgust. Back home, the annoying landlord showed up. He ate and drank, and after he was done, he asked Jay for a loan, but Jay had no money to give him. As an intern, he barely made enough to cover rent and food, and there was nothing left over. The landlord was pissed off, but didn't say anything since Jay had paid the rent. He just ordered Jay to clean up the dishes before he left. Jay didn't dare argue and silently endured it all. Later that night, the lady who had shown interest in Jay texted him, telling him his hair hadn't turned out right and attaching a couple of flattering photos. The photos were perfect, clearly hinting at something beyond just the hair, but Jay, ever the straightforward guy, told her to get another stylist to fix it tomorrow. At that moment, it was probably safe to say the lady's bed had gone cold, and she'd be losing sleep over it. After sending the text, Jay received a call from his best friend. His friend had invited 2 girls over and expected Jay to host them. Each girl would have her own time with him, and Jay had no choice but to agree, as his friend was relying on him to make the night happen. The most important thing, of course, was Jay buying the drinks and snacks. It was obvious that his friend was exploiting him, and Jay, never one to refuse, immediately went to buy the alcohol and food. On his way back, Jay passed through the underground passage again. When he reached the locker, he suddenly stopped, his curiosity piqued. He opened it and found another strand of hair inside. Intrigued, Jay quickly pulled out his phone, switched on the flashlight, and peered into the locker, wondering if there was a hidden compartment, but he found nothing unusual. Back home, Jay's friend arrived with the girls, and the 3 of them chatted and laughed while Jay couldn't get a word in. Suddenly, one of the girls sitting next to him asked what he was thinking about. Jay asked her if she believed in fate. When the girl told the others, they all burst into laughter, as if Jay had told the funniest joke. Jay's friend immediately pointed out that Jay was a great guy, but his way of speaking was a bit old-fashioned. In today's world, girls didn't seem to like the type of old-school romantic that Jay was. Noticing the awkward atmosphere, his friend suggested they go out for a walk, and the other girl quickly said she was going to buy cigarettes. They both left Jay sitting there alone. Jay sat there, wondering when the person he was meant to be with would show up. After thinking for a while, he realized that maybe she had already appeared, like the strand of hair in the locker. He grabbed something that looked like a lipstick or pen and wrote on a napkin, asking who it was across from the locker. After writing it, he placed the napkin inside the locker. A few days later, Jay returned, hoping for a response. But when he opened the locker, instead of an answer, there was another strand of hair. Jay sat on the ground, staring at it for a moment. This time, he didn't throw it away. He carefully wrapped it up and tucked it into a notebook, then placed it in the locker. A few more days passed, and this time, when he checked the notebook, there was a reply. The writing seemed to be in reverse, and Jay had to use a mirror to read it. The message said she happened to discover a different world across from his locker and asked if her world looked like hers. To Jay's surprise and delight, he discovered that the back of the locker really led to another world. He quickly began writing in his notebook, explaining that it was only after noticing the hair that he realized there was something on the other side of the locker. He was eager to learn more about this world and asked if everything there was the opposite of his world, just like in a mirror. From there, the two began exchanging notes, talking across worlds. Jay even started writing his words backward, seemingly to make it easier for the other side to read. A few days into their conversations, Jay introduced himself. He told the stranger that his name was Jay. He was male, and he liked women. He also mentioned he was an intern barber, and he was handsome as hell. He was curious, wondering if the person on the other side was a man or a woman, and what differences existed between their worlds. The stranger replied, saying her world was Seoul, where the 2002 World Cup was held and the 2019 COVID-19 outbreak happened. As for whether she was a man or a woman, she didn't say. Jay was surprised to find their world was so similar, so he continued talking about the weather and his job. The stranger revealed she had visited the barber shop where Jay worked, but the people there were not at all like how Jay described them. They were amazed and said the world was truly strange. One day, as Jay was about to send the notebook again, he glanced at an advertisement and, on a whim, expressed his thoughts aloud, saying he would find his other half eventually. This time, the stranger didn't respond right away, but simply said she wanted to hear Jay's voice. Excited, Jay immediately grabbed his recorder and began recording, but in his excitement, his voice stumbled and the recording came out a little shaky. After placing it in the locker a few days later, he got a reply. To his delight, the stranger was indeed a woman, and judging by her voice, she seemed quite attractive. From then on, they communicated through voice recordings. They talked about everything. The girl even told Jay where she lived, mentioning there was a 4-leaf clover in front of her house, which she looked at every day before going to work. Jay in turn described his own neighborhood, telling her about a rabbit park, a place he liked to visit. After a while, the stranger suddenly stopped replying. Jay grew anxious and empty inside, as if he had lost something important. He couldn't understand why she had stopped responding. Had the love just disappeared, or did she suddenly lose interest in him? This left Jay feeling disconnected from everything, and he even lost interest in his work and stopped replying to the lady who kept texting him. She got upset and came to the shop to get her hair done. During the appointment, Jay accidentally cut her ear while distracted, and he was immediately fired from the barber shop. Jay was heartbroken. The thought of the stranger ignoring him made him feel like the world had abandoned him again. But just as he was feeling down, he finally received a message from her. She suggested they meet in person. When Jay saw the message, his heart raced with excitement. He arrived early by the locker, waiting anxiously. As the clock struck midnight, the door on the other side of the locker opened, revealing an advertisement similar to the one on his side. But to his disappointment, the girl wasn't there. However, encouraged by the thought that she wanted to meet him, Jay decided to climb through. Once in the other world, Jay noticed that everything seemed the same, except the lights had a reddish tint. He began looking for the girl, but after searching for a long time, he couldn't find her. He started to realize that no matter where he went, he always ended up back by the locker. Just as he was about to turn back, Jay saw someone standing by the locker in his original world. It's a girl, looking disheveled. She saw him, gave a strange smile, and before he could say anything, shut the locker door. It was as if Jay could never return. On the other side of the world, the girl seemed quite happy, in stark contrast to Jay's despair. It turns out that long ago, the girl was tricked into this place by someone, and she, like Jay now, found herself trapped with no way to return. In order to escape and to draw attention, she started leaving strands of hair in the locker. As more hair piled up, her once beautiful hairstyle became the messy one it was now. However, she was still happy. After all, hair would grow back, but finding a love-struck, attentive person like Jay wasn't so easy. Thinking this, the girl decided it was time to leave, and that's where the story ends. It's not certain whether Jay will escape using the same method, but one thing is for sure, Jay doesn't have much hair. This also explains why the girl suddenly asked to hear Jay's voice earlier. A pleasant voice is even more attractive to someone in love, and it just so happens that the girl's voice was magnetic. The girl's efforts to escape were truly impressive. She had really gone all out, using every trick in the book. It also highlights how terrifying love-struck people can be. While others might be spending money on their relationships, some are literally risking their lives for it. The fifth story begins on a pitch-black night when the sky suddenly lit up with flashes of lightning, followed by thunder so loud that it woke up a girl from her sleep. The flickering lightning made the girl feel even more afraid, and she found herself yearning for her mother. She knocked desperately on her mother's door, but it took a while before there was any response. Her mother, busy with something, told her to talk about it tomorrow, but the girl wouldn't let it go. In the end, her mother coldly shut the door, and the girl spent the rest of the night in fear. Her name was Emily, and her family was wealthy. She had a special friend named Lady Bro, and their meeting was rather unusual. One day, while playing in an exclusive park for the rich, a stray dog suddenly appeared. At the crucial moment, Lady Bro rushed out and scared the dog away, saving her. After that, they became friends. However, Emily didn't particularly like Lady Bro. Lady Bro lived in a rental district, and Emily's mother would say that it was a stroke of luck for Lady Bro to be friends with Emily. After all, their family never socialized with people from rental areas. After a chat, the three of them were about to head downstairs to go shopping when Lady Bro's mom appeared, who had been waiting for a while. Lady Bro's mom wasn't just there to accompany them. She also had to open doors for people, drive them around, and even had to be careful of others' moods. During the ride, they talked about Lady Bro and how she had used a lot of Emily's mom's makeup. The unspoken implication was clear. Lady Bro's mom immediately responded, saying she would buy a new set. Although Emily's mom wouldn't force her to pay, the exchange of glances made it clear that the real question was if she could actually afford it. Lady Bro's mom realized this and gave a nervous laugh before falling silent. Later, they went to a clothing store just as Lady Bro's mom happened to get a phone call. The three moms exchanged knowing looks, and one of them even casually mentioned that she always pretended to take calls at times like this. Each of them bought a lot of clothes, but Emily's mom was pretty considerate. She bought 2 items for Lady Bro's mom, probably as a subtle way of thanking her for saving Emily. The other 2 moms had rather amusing expressions, but Lady Bro's mom accepted the gifts. However, as soon as she stood up to leave, the other 2 moms rolled their eyes. Back at Emily's house, ever since her mom locked her out last time, Emily had been feeling ill. Lately, she often heard a strange thudding sound. She told Lady Bro about it, and Lady Bro claimed her house was haunted. Lady Bro said she could see a ghostly woman and that the thudding was actually the sound of the woman's head hitting the ground repeatedly. Emily was scared, but stubbornly insisted Lady Bro was lying, and they ended the conversation on a sour note. As Lady Bro stepped out, she ran into their moms. The 2 moms exchanged knowing looks, and once they parted ways, Lady Bro's mom was the first to ask if things were going well between Lady Bro and Emily. Lady Bro confirmed that things weren't. Meanwhile, back at Emily's house, her mom called to check in on her. Emily complained to her mom about the argument with Lady Bro. That night, another thunderstorm rolled in. Emily, understanding how busy her mom was, didn't want to bother her this time. She silently endured the fear on her own. But then, in a daze, she saw the ghost Lady Bro had described. The ghost fell from Emily's top bunk, and the thudding sound became real, giving Emily a first-hand experience of the horror. She fainted in fear. A long while later, when the sun came up, Lady Bro and Emily's moms were standing by her bed. They had been calling Emily for a while before she woke up. Emily's mom, unfazed, remarked that Emily was a heavy sleeper. With a mom like that, it was a miracle Emily was still alive. After they left, Emily told Lady Bro about the ghost she'd seen, but Lady Bro didn't say much. She just told Emily to prepare a basin, a mirror, and some matches. Emily, used to being pampered, asked Lady Bro to get the items from the kitchen. As Lady Bro passed through the living room, she overheard Emily's mom talking. The conversation was about a gathering later that day with other moms who were friends of their children, all living in the wealthy district. Emily's mom was planning to take Lady Bro's mom along, but the other two moms didn't think it would be appropriate, as they found it embarrassing to bring Lady Bro's mom. But since Emily's mom had already made up her mind, the other two moms didn't dare say anything. Back in Emily's room, Lady Bro set up two mirrors facing each other and placed the basin in the center. She lit the match and told Emily to watch as she dropped it into the water. Lady Bro instructed Emily to close her eyes and not look at the mirrors. Emily agreed and obediently closed her eyes. Then Lady Bro began muttering something that sounded like a chant. After a while, Lady Bro told Emily that the woman had just appeared next to the mirror. Emily asked who she was. Lady Bro replied that she's someone who's always lived here. Emily then asked why she kept falling, and Lady Bro said the woman had made a big mistake in the room. Emily asked how she could make the woman leave, and Lady Bro said she didn't know, that it would depend on how Emily handled it. Hearing this, Emily suddenly opened her eyes and looked into the mirror. At that moment, the mirror shattered. At the same time, Lady Bro's mom had been brought by Emily's mom to attend the gathering. After some brief introductions, it was clear that everyone was looking at her with a sense of disdain. Emily's mom immediately spoke up, saying that they were all mothers of the same children, living in the same neighborhood. Although the area was divided into rich and poor, since they were all sitting together now, they should make an effort to support each other. So they decided to form a group to discuss their children, agreeing to meet every month on the same day. Of course, there would be a fee to cover future meeting expenses, $200,000 per person to start. Considering Lady Bro's mom's situation, she would be exempt from paying. At this, everyone quietly snickered. The conversation naturally turned to Lady Bro, but it wasn't exactly flattering. Comments about her poor grades and her stealing behaviors were made. Lady Bro's mom, embarrassed, excused herself to use the bathroom. It wasn't that she was trying to avoid the conversation, she genuinely needed to go. However, when she reached the bathroom, she realized that at the rich people's facilities, there was someone guarding the door. The guard stopped Lady Bro's mom, saying that since she was from the rental district, she couldn't use the bathroom here. Lady Bro's mom was stunned. What was she supposed to do now? Just then, Emily's mom arrived, and fortunately the security guard recognized her and let them in. Unfortunately, it turned out that the bathroom was crowded with wealthy people, and by pure coincidence, there were no free stalls. The two waited outside for a long time, and when they finally emerged, Lady Bro's mom was in obvious distress. Unable to hold it in, she had an accident. Emily's mom witnessed this and didn't know what to say, so she quietly covered her running nose. At Emily's house, her precious doll went missing, and she insisted that Lady Bro had taken it. Lady Bro was certain that she hadn't touched Emily's doll, but no matter how much she explained, Emily didn't believe her. In fact, Emily became so upset that she insulted Lady Bro. The two girls started fighting, and this was just when Emily's mom, who had returned home, walked in. Furious, Emily's mom shoved Lady Bro to the ground and then called Lady Bro's mom over for a private chat. She said that it was normal for children to have conflicts, but asked Lady Bro's mom if she knew whether Lady Bro had taken Emily's doll or not. Lady Bro's mom said she didn't know, and she wasn't sure how to explain it. She could only say that she would ask Lady Bro later and prepared to leave. But this set Emily's mom off, and she snapped at Lady Bro's mom, saying that just because they had frequented high-end places together and shared a few meals didn't make them friends. She added that the other moms had warned her against associating with Lady Bro's mom, but she hadn't listened and had even been supportive of her. Lady Bro's mom's behavior had hurt her, and now she believed that people should stick with others who were like them. Hearing this, Lady Bro's mom grabbed Emily's mom's hand, trying to salvage something, and offered to buy Emily another doll. But could she really afford it? At that, Lady Bro's mom started crying like a giant baby. Emily's mom burst out laughing, and the other two moms, who had been eavesdropping from the doorway, were delighted. They'd heard everything, and now they were relieved to think they wouldn't have to spend any more time with Lady Bro's mom. But seeing her cry so sadly, their hearts softened, and they couldn't help but feel sorry for her. With that thought, the two of them immediately opened a cake they had specially prepared for Lady Bro's mom. Today was Lady Bro's mom's birthday, and they had originally planned to surprise her. But now, they weren't sure if giving her the cake would ease the awkward tension between Lady Bro's mom and Emily's mom. They weren't sure, but they still wanted to offer the cake. However, when they reached the room, they found Lady Bro's mom wasn't there, but instead saw Emily's mom hanging by the window. They rushed to help, but just as they did, Lady Bro's mom suddenly appeared and pushed them both down. The scene was a bit gruesome. Meanwhile, Emily found the missing doll in her study. Lady Bro, seeing this, suggested Emily return it to clear her name, but Emily refused. With no other option, Lady Bro pulled out a fruit knife and threatened Emily, saying that if she didn't comply, she would destroy the doll and that the ghost would follow her forever. Emily thought about it for a moment, but still refused. Lady Bro, unfazed, just said that Emily had brought this on herself, then looked at the knife in her hand and gave a strange, eerie smile. A scene shift, and now Lady Bro was with her mom. Her mom looked terrified when she saw Lady Bro, then stood there helplessly. After a brief pause, she slowly walked towards Lady Bro and apologized. It felt like the apology of a child who had done something wrong. The scene shifted again, and several days passed. The location of the earlier incident was now roped off, and a curious resident asked the security guard if it was really the people from the rental district who did it. The guard replied that it was all just rumors. Meanwhile, in another neighborhood, a woman was walking with a child and a dog. The woman gently stroked the dog while the child stroked the woman's head. They released the dog, and it ran to chase the child. Lady Bro rushed in to rescue the child, and it seemed like this family might be Lady Bro's new target. And with that, the story ended, without much logic. To summarize, both Lady Bro and her mom are seriously unwell. It's suspected that Emily might have been taken out by Lady Bro. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.